world powers have been trying to get the Syrian opposition to sit with the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Geneva. But the Syrian opposition is far from a single entity. Take a look at this list. We're talking about dozens of different groups. Some are political, some are military, some work inside Syria, some out. They are united in their opposition to the regime of Bashar al-Assad, but have different views on how to move forward. Many of the names on this list are actually umbrella organizations of even more groups, so it's not even the complete list right now that you're looking at on this wall. For more on this, let's speak to Joshua Landis, who's the director for the Center of Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma. He joins us live from Oklahoma City, I believe. Thank you very much, Joshua, for being on Al Jazeera. So the fundamental demand of the Syrian opposition right now, the Syrian National Coalition, is that Bashar al-Assad has to go. But are those fighting on the ground on the same page? Are they on the same wavelength as the Syrian opposition that's talking to the international community?
No, they're not. The largest militias in Syria have all rejected the Syrian National Coalition. They say that they don't represent them, that they're in the pay and are dependent on the West, and they won't have anything to do with it. So this is one of the major problems. But it's only one of the problems that the United States faces. There are vastly different interests. The U.S. and Europeans want to stop the outflow of refugees. They want to stop the pain and the pressure placed on Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, Iraq, on the U.S. allies. The rebels want to win the fight against Assad. Mm-hmm. Those are two very different agendas. So in a sense, what the West is doing is they're asking the rebels to accept the fact that Assad is still a power on the ground and to negotiate with him. They don't want to do that. And Saudi Arabia and other allies, Turkey, don't want to do it either. So the West has to convince its own allies. And as you were just talking about, Saudi Arabia is the fly in the ointment right now.
So different agendas, you say, from the different opposition groups that are fighting in Syria, those outside. So if the SNC, the coalition, were to go to Geneva and agree some sort of deal, a peace deal with the Syrian government, that wouldn't then mean that the fighting would stop on the ground. It doesn't necessarily mean that then.
No, not at all. But it would allow the U.S. and Europe to begin pressuring countries like Iran and countries like Saudi Arabia, the two biggest arms suppliers to the Syrian sides, to begin to wind down their supplies. And that would be, that would be the effort, is to try to deny the weapons flow, mm-hmm. which would slow down the fighting and perhaps stop the outflow of refugees. And that would be the strategy of the West.
Okay. Now, that would be the strategy, you say. So they have leverage then on the Syrian opposition, the umbrella Syrian National Coalition. They can persuade them, in your opinion, to attend Geneva too, without the precondition that Assad step down.
Well, that's the big sticking point, because in a sense, what the West is asking the opposition to do is to recognize that there's a stalemate and to negotiate with Assad. They don't want to. But if they can get that, then they can perhaps persuade the Iranians and the Saudis to recognize this fact as well and to stop sending more arms and to begin winding this conflict down.
Do you think, Joshua, finally, that Geneva 2 can happen and it can yield a positive result?
Well, that's the fear is that it might happen, but that so few representatives from the Syrian opposition would be there that it would really be very little to show. And we're seeing Saudi Arabia rejecting this U.S. strategy. Saudi Arabia wants to defeat Assad. They want the United States to strike Assad, to give more arms to the opposition, and to power up the Sunni rebels so that they can defeat this Shiite Alawite regime. And that's what Saudi Arabia is still convinced, and I think the Turks are as well, that they can destroy Assad, not negotiate with him.
Joshua Landis, always good to get your thoughts. Thanks for joining us live from Oklahoma. That's Joshua Landis from the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma.